Heyo and welcome everybody, I am Phoenixscales and I welcome you to my build guide for the cold conversion Blade Vortex Inquisitor, which I played during Harvest League. With the reintroduction of Harvest into the core game coming with Ritual on this Friday, I will expect this build to be able to take advantage of both Heist base types and alternate quality gems, as well as the introduction of Maven Orb crafting on top of Harvest crafting with the new Atlas expansion. I played this build for quite some time in Harvest, and with the insane amount of crafting that we had there, I was able to obtain quite some good pieces of gear. So, to showcase this build, I will run with this equipment I'm currently wearing, which is after the end of Heist League, both a boss and a map, as well as with budget gear, which is obtainable even in the first week of the Ritual League. So let's do it. This is just going to be a Toxic Sewer run, tier 15.
Purity will prevail.
Don't worry, little beast. We're friends now. You will be a survivor. Off you go, little beast. Away!
Must have time to gather my will.
That was a hunt.
Alright, so this was a showcase of a map. This build clears maps very easily and very comfortably, thanks to both the explosions and the unleashed playstyle of Blade Vortex. I will now showcase the boss fight, namely the Shaper.
I see you, little mouse. You don't belong here. Run along. Turn back, trespasser. Cease this madness. You tamper with things you do not understand. Your recklessness will not go unpunished.
We tend to perma-freeze these bosses, so it's quite often needed to move away from them.
This is your final warning.
Onto the Shaper.
My hand again, little mouse. So, you've chosen to side with chaos. This is my world, and you shall obey my order. Imperfect.
He's recovering. We need to find a way back quickly.
onto the second phase.
Your unmaking.
Father, it's me. Let me help you.
The horror must be stopped. Obstacles destroyed.
I must have time to gather my will.
Insignificant.
He's recovering. We need to find a way back quickly.
And into the third and last phase.
Cannot lose them.
They lied to you, Father. I'm your true memory.
To save the future, the past must be sacrificed.
To me, exile, quickly! Buy me some time.
That's it for Shaper.
Irrelevant.
We will now move on to both of these runs with budget gear. Budget gear will both consist of this stuff, as it's far inferior to this one. As well as the no explosion mod body armor. Even removing a 6th link.
I'll need to be lighter on my feet to use this.
And using Awaken increased area of effect, as well as only using Hatred and Herald of Ice, which reserves 75% of mana normally, which is something you would achieve in a budget state.
I must have time to gather my will.
That's it for the map. As you can see, the explosion mod really adds to the clear of the character. However, it was still a fairly easy clear. The damage difference will show mostly on the Shaper fight now, as the damage actually drops from about 13 million on Cyrus to about 4 million without flasks. So it's quite a sizable difference. That's 4 million with all auras. I disabled some of them. So that's even less.
Along here. Run along. Turn back, trespasser. Cease this battle.
As you can see, the bosses actually get to do some damage to us. Not just that, but also go into their second phase, which we did not get into on the last showcase.
You tackle with things you do not understand.
I must have time to gather my will.
Your recklessness will not go unpunished. This is your final
Onto the Shaper.
Will you force my hand again, little mouse?
I will actually put in Consecrated Effect
You've
now.
chosen to side with chaos. This is my world, and you shall obey my order.
They're coming through.
Embrace my message. Inconsequence.
That concludes phase 1.
He's trying to recover. Hurry! Let's find a way back.
Behold the face of your unlady.
Father, it's me. Let me help you.
Start of phase 2.
The horror must be stopped. Obstacles destroyed.
To me, exile. Quickly!
I must have time to gather.
Embrace my message.
that concludes phase 2.
Trying to recover. Hurry! Let's find a way back.
And onto the last phase.
They lied to you, Father. I'm your true memory.
To save the future, the past must be sacrificed.
To me, exile, quickly!
Even able to tank the Shaper Slam, something I did not know until today.
They're coming through! Come to me!
Gaze into the abyss. Embrace my blessing.
And that's Shaper for the budget version. Notice that the fight is far longer.
I must have time to gather my will.
However, that's absolutely normal due to a loss of about 11 million DPS. So yeah. Now, we are playing a Blade Vortex character, which means we can scale Blade Vortex's damage in two ways. That is, either scale the physical part of the gem, as well as the gem level. This build scales both of these. We achieve a level 28 Blade Vortex, that is via 1 level from the amulet, 5 levels from the staff, 1 level from the body armor, and 1 level from Blade Vortex level 21, which is level 28. This is quite an increase of damage for spells, as the base spell of Blade Vortex deals 112 to 167, but on level 28 it actually deals 222 to 333 damage, so that is already double the base damage it does. On top of that, we are using auras, such as Hatred, Zealotry, in addition to 3 Heralds, to scale Blade Vortex damage even further. This build makes use of the Purposeful Harbinger node, together with 3 Heralds, Herald of Ash, Purity, and Ice, to achieve the 40% increased effect of auras. On top of that, we also use Vengeful Commander for another 40% increased effect of auras, in this case, Hatred. Defensively, we're talking about a sizable life pool of 6,500 life, on top of 1,500 ES. Harvest Crafting allows us to cap the chaos resistance of the build to 75. And we're using the Doriani's Glorious Vanity Timeless Jewel to convert another 50% of damage taken onto both the life pool and the energy shield pool. We recover both of these via the Doriani's Lesson for life, as well as the Energy Leech support So if we take a damage hit, we leech both life and energy shield and take damage on these two. On top of that, we're using 3 enduring charges, which are always up on bosses. We use an immortal call setup that consumes these endurance charges to make us resistant to both physical and elemental damage. We are using the Taste of Hate flask together with helmet mod, physical damage from hits taken as cold damage, which converts 30% of the hit damage from physical damage into cold damage. On top of that, the amulet has another 5% physical damage reduction. We are also fairly fast since we have Elusive and Tailwind up 100% of the time. Since we are a staff build, we also can make use of block, which is capped for us at 66% attack block and 42% spell block. That is even higher with roomies if you wish to be more defensive about it. It is to note that this is glancing blows block, so you still take some amount of damage from the blocked hits. Regarding quality of life, the biggest quality of life is probably the corpse explosions. Not having to worry about on-death effects is quite a big deal. We are ailment immune due to the Inquisitor's node Pious Path, which says Consecrated Ground grants elemental immunity. We always have Consecrated Ground. That is either due to the Sanctuary, if we are standing still. You can notice the Consecrated Ground here. We have a Sulphur Flask, either the Bottle of Faith or a normal Sulphur Flask will do. And on top of that, we use Zealotry to have Consecrated Ground even on bosses. That means we are almost always ailment immune if we want to. We are always immune if we want to. On top of that, Harvest League introduced belt enchantments. I chose the reduced effect of curses on Consecrated Ground, which gives me, together with both rings, 100% reduced effect of curses on me while I'm on Consecrated Ground, which makes us partially curse immune. The only thing that's necessary then is a bleed immunity flask, which I solved with both the flask for normal bleeds and a corrupted blood immunity jewel. In my case, it is a Thread of Hope. We are also using Unleash instead of a 4th blue damage gem link. But Unleash is just such a quality of life for Blade Vortex. You can cast it once, move around, cast it again. So you have to cast Blade Vortex only every 3 to 4 seconds. All of that is just amazing to play. We also freeze most bosses, which is quite a good thing if it's not a phase boss, as we could see on the Shaper fights. But that is also a huge security measure for this build. If we're talking gear, then it is needless to say that this amount of gear is not what you need to start the build. You can start the build with Rim Sorrows, with a normal spell damage staff, with a normal body armor, and it will perform just fine. However, if you are into crafting and self-crafting the gear, especially with Harvest, I can assure you that there is plenty of room to do upgrades on your gear. Pretty much every piece is Awakener orbed for this matter, and that makes it fairly expensive, but it is not at all necessary. Starting with stuff, we have the Takati's mod from the Temple, which is increased spell damage and non-chaos damage as extra chaos damage, both with the +2 level of all spell gems as well as the level of all physical spell skill gems. This +5 to all physical spell skill gems is a huge increase to Blade Vortex damage. On top of that, it also scales Hatred, Zealotry, Herald of Ice, and the other spell skills we are using quite a bit. The global crit multi and critical strike chance makes it so that Blade Vortex almost has a 100% crit chance. For the last mod on the staff, you would ideally want the Redeemer mod. Hatred has 60% increased aura effect. The spells have 10% chance to deal double damage, is fine as well. Now, since we're using 5 auras, there is quite a bit of reserved mana we need on the gear and tree. This is achieved via both this cluster here, via 30% reduced mana reservation of Hatred, one of the 50% auras, 5% reduced mana reservation here, and the Charisma node, which also reduces mana reserve by another 8%. This makes it so we can run all these 5 auras together with an Enlightened 4 in a 6-linked staff. Moving on to the body armor, we have fairly generic Explosion mod, Spell crit, Power charge on crit, +1 to socketed active skill gems, and life body armor. This looks mightier than it is, but it is really easy with Harvest crafting. A guide for that is in the forum guide. Moving on to the helmet, it is important to have the Unleash +1 to number of seals, as that makes it so we get 5 blades every time we cast Blade Vortex, as well as the mana reservation mod. Both the elemental damage taken mod and the physical damage taken as cold damage are optional, and just add a nice layer of damage and protection and safety. This build is an Inquisitor, and it lacks dexterity, so the gloves are what we search dexterity on. They have a huge dexterity roll, as well as 50% physical damage converted to cold damage. This is actually quite important, and it is achieved via, number 1, the Temple mod, which converts 25% of physical to cold damage, and the Crusader mod, which also converts 25% of physical damage to cold. The boots also have strength and dexterity, which is something we need for both Blade Vortex and the Astral Plate. So the boots were rolled with the essences for strength and dexterity, one of them, and then Harvest allowed us to craft on Elusive and Tailwind with precision, like with 100% crafting precision. The belt is just flat charge on critical strike and increased maximum life. The belt was crafted with pristine fossils, which I needed to roll tier 1 life and tier 1 increased life. It is easy to craft the flat charge on crit because it's guaranteed with a crit augment with Harvest, and then just triple resistances. The rings were crafted with the Shaper and Crusader mods for Assassin's Mark, which is how we apply the curse, and the reduced effect of curses, as well as the reduced effect of curses and the reflected elemental damage mod, on top of some life and resistances. The amulet is a bit funnier. The amulet is crafted with the Hatred reduced mana reservation and the level 2 all physical spell skill gems. Then, with a crit mod, I was able to slam the critical strike multiplier. I was able to remove and add cold for the physical as extra cold, add life for the 100 life roll, and another Phys Exalt, another Phys Augment for the physical damage reduction. It is necessary to anoint Charisma for the reduced mana reservation, as well as fertilize this mod, use Fertilize Catalysts on this amulet to both increase the life roll and the reserved mana on Hatred mod, as this will allow us to run more auras. As for the jewels, it is important to have a jewel with Doriani's Lesson. It is fairly easy to roll, actually, since Doriani's Lesson, and there's another life mod on jewels, so you can sort of force it with augment lives and remove add lives. This is an important mod because it leeches life. With the addition of Heist, Blade Vortex can also have an alternate quality, which has Blade Vortex damage leeches life. Where is it? Here. This could take care of it as well, and then you can that frees up this mod. But the Blade Vortex gem is really expensive with this alternate quality, so getting it here is really easy. Both the medium jewel sockets are rolled with Purposeful Harbinger, Vengeful Commander, and Chaos Resistance, as it grants another 5% Chaos Resistance. The Vengeful Commander can be rolled easily with both Fire, Lightning, and Cold augments and remove adds, so it is just important to roll the Purposeful Harbinger and then craft as you wish. We use an intuitive leap here to save some of the passive points. That is 3 passive points here, some 3 passive points here, and another 4 here with another 4 here. So this is really, really good. You can get elemental penetration, cold penetration instead of area of effect on this one. We also use a Thread of Hope, which allows us to get Divine Wrath, Divine Judgment, and Divine Fury, which are both insane amounts of physical as extra elemental damage, and some elemental and physical damage. So these are really, really good. We also use a Watcher's Eye. The most important mod on this Watcher's Eye is the physical damage converted to cold damage while affected by hatred. Any other mod is good. You can get a Flask Charge with precision, you can get another hatred mod, you can get a zealotry mod which grants increased damage taken for each enemy on consecrated ground you created. There is a different variety, but it is really important to just get the cold conversion mod. The flasks are a Bottled Faith, a Aziri's Promise, Taste of Hate, a movement speed flask as we want to move fast, even in boss fights, and instant bleed flask of staunching. Taste of Hate can be the Bottled Faith can be substituted for a normal sulfur flask. The Aziri's Promise can be whatever, as well as the Sapphire Flask. You can exchange them for both Basalt Flask and Rumi's Concoction if you want to be far more tankier. Rumi's Concoction would bring us at almost max block in both of these, as we are at 66 now and 42 now. And I think that's it for the Glorious Vanity. The Glorious Vanity allows us to convert this Agnostic Keystone to the Corrupted Soul, which grants us another 20% of life as extra maximum energy shield, and we want to increase this energy shield life pool because we take damage on both life and energy shield. The other jewel is just a generic crit multi, life, and damage jewel. Moving on to the passive tree, we take a normal start from the Inquisitor, get some area nodes, get all the life nodes on the way, get the staff nodes since we're a staff build. Both counterweight and this cluster here are very, very good for crit multi. This sovereignty cluster is very much needed for the mana reservation, some more crit multi. The cluster jewel is really important as well. More life. The intuitive leap grants us Herald reservation here and Herald effect. Some more area here, crit, life, and also just more life, a place for the Dorianis jewel, more life, and the glancing blows. Now, with the introduction of heists, we got alternate quality gems, and these alternate quality gems offer quite a bit of variety and additional options we can explore. That means there is several things, such as Hatred has an additional movement speed while on chilled ground, perhaps. Zealotry has additional crit multiplier. There is Blade Vortex leashes life, as I showcased earlier, which would allow for ease of gear for the Doriani's lesson. And I still look forward to exploring some of the options as I haven't gone into them. With that said, the crafting for these items I have here is currently not doable, at least in standard, and it's not going to be doable until Friday at least. So I will leave a crafting guide in the forum guide below. Everything below is in the description, as well as timestamps and stuff. There's also a PoB with a leveling progression in the forum guide, and I will put it in the description of this video as well. And if you have any more questions or build-related stuff you want to ask, feel free to ask it here or in the forum. As for the changes made in 3.13, the patch notes did not affect this build at all. most of the diversion quality nerfs on auras were something we did not use previously, so they will still be an added bonus. And the Blade Vortex gem itself did not get nerfed. The most interesting change is probably the change to the Inquisitor Ascendancy. The Inquisitor Ascendancy now has the node Instruments of Virtue, which grants the Battle Mage affix. Battle Mage grants added spell damage equal to the damage of the main hand weapon. Now, since we are using a physical staff, that will be physical damage added to spells. However, I think that the added bonus from the Battle Mage, which would be something around 86 to 144, which is something like 110, added damage to Blade Vortex, is not that good for Blade Vortex. Blade Vortex only has an effectiveness of added damage of 25%, which would give us just about 25 physical damage on average to each blade, just with the same weapon. If we were to scale physical damage on this weapon, which would mean we would lose both the physical spell skill and spell skill affixes on top of the spell damage, I think the loss of these 5 levels and spell damage mod is just outweighs the bonus from the Battle Mage. On top of that, I do not think it is actually good to take the node Instruments of Virtue for the Battle Mage, as Pious Path for the immunity to elemental ailments and the Inevitable Judgment, which is the penetration, are just too good to pass up on, so I think these will still be locked on. However, there has been a change made to the Disintegrator Staff. The Disintegrator Staff had previously quite an insane physical to spell scaling, in this case 400 to about 600. This will be removed in favor of adding the Battle Mage affix onto the Disintegrator Staff itself. And what that means is that we do not need to spec into this Battle Mage node on the Inquisitor and get another really, really good chunk of damage from the Disintegrator Staff. Now, since I don't have the numbers on the Battle Mage, I can't quite foresee the changes, but I think the Disintegrator Staff will be either a really, really, really good budget option for a staff, or even a late-game alternative for the staff here, because the staff here is quite hard to craft with Harvest. So I think this will be an option to look out for. With that being said, I think it's time to close this build guide. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're having fun with the Ritual League on Friday. I myself will be starting on Friday, so I hope you're having a good time. And with this, Phoenixscale out. Goodbye.